Hi friends, welcome back. Today we're going to do something nice and chill because it's January and we could all use some chill. So I got some new paints and I got, in like the last year, I've gotten new paints and I've gotten some new art supplies in general, some new mediums, and I need to make a new swatch sheet because if you are an artist and you paint or you draw or you whatever, you should have swatches of all your colors because let's be fair, the color that is on the tube of paint rarely ever matches the color of paint that comes out of the tube. So I have a swatch sheet currently, but it's a little out of date and stuff's not in order. And honestly, it's just time to make a new one and separate them by brand. So let's sit down and have a nice chill time doing some swatch sheets, shall we? Like I said, I've gotten several new colors this year and I just haven't had the time to actually sit down and swatch everything. So the easiest way to fix that is to just start doing it. And white always seems like the silliest one to swatch, but it is a slightly different color from the paper. So I do recommend swatching your white. And I think what I'm gonna do, first I'm gonna get this out so that I can dry my brush. But I think what I'm gonna do is, after I paint each swatch, I'll go ahead and write down what it is. And apparently I'll spell it wrong. On the first one even. Titanium. Oops. And I have them all arranged off to the side over here so that I have them in the order that I wanted them to be in. Hopefully that works well for me. So this is one of the colors I got, one of the new ones. Yes, I got black. How strange. But no, when I was doing, I believe it was the badger painting, I was having trouble coming up with the exact right color that I wanted for the badger. And that meant that I needed to get a different shade of black. So the one that I had originally is Mars Black, which when I was painting just acrylic was the only one that I ever used. I did have an ivory black and I just did not use it. So when I started painting with gouache, I thought to myself, oh, well, I don't need to get ivory black because I won't use it. But now I find that I do gravitate more toward the ivory black when I'm doing animals. And I gravitate toward the Mars Black if I'm doing outlines, if I'm doing night skies. There are very specific things that the Mars Black is good for. And there are specific things that the Ivory Black is good for. So I think it's really good to have both, honestly. As much of a pain as it can be to have both. Because you have to like look all the time and make sure you're holding the one that you wanted. This one, this is just iridescent bright gold. I'm just going to call it bright gold on the swatch sheet because I'll know what that is. But I don't use it a whole lot. My mom actually got it for me for Christmas in 2023. I had told her what paints I use and told her if she wanted to get me anything from this line to just pick a fun color. And I gave her a list of what I had at the time. And she thought that I would really like the bright gold. And I do really like it, honestly. It's a nice color. It's kind of a different color. It's not one that I would have necessarily thought of buying for myself. But I did, after getting that one, end up getting the bright silver. And the bright gold has actually turned into a color that I've used not infrequently this year for birds. Birds have that very iridescent sheen to their feathers, and I find that I can just mix the bright gold into whatever color I want, and it'll give it just that little bit of iridescence that bird wings just demand. What you're all going to learn by watching me do this is that I'm really bad at writing the letter B. I don't know why. I don't know what happened in my life that the letter B and I don't get along, but we don't. I have never really been that good at writing B's. Or 3s, for that matter. They're very similar, and I don't like them. 2023 was a challenge for me for that reason. I had to write a lot of 3s. I was really hoping that after 2023 I would get better at writing 3s, because I would have to type 23, or write, not type, obviously I had to type it too, but like, that's not going to help me with my handwriting now, is it? But unfortunately, even with the vast number of times I had to literally write 2023, I got no better at writing 3s. Which means that I'm no better at writing B's, so I have to really think about it. I forgot to write the name of that yellow. I was on a roll, guys. What was the name of the yellow? That one's nice and easy, just peach. Next to cadmium-free yellow medium. The peach shade was another one that I got because I thought that I might use it sometimes, and I actually use it a lot more than I would have imagined. I use it in a lot of my skies. It makes a really pretty sunrise color. It also mixes to make a pretty nice flesh tone, depending on what you're going for. And I use it a lot for kind of a nice little like flower bud color. All right, this is cadmium free orange. That's one row done. I don't know what that means, but it's a row. This one I actually got specifically because when I looked at it online, I said to myself, you know what that color is? That's the color of a fox. And I think I was right. That is the color of a fox. At least one of them. I know foxes are varying colors, and I know that my foxes specifically are not this color. But when I bought this shade, I was doing more realistic foxes. So I was using more of the red oxide and then the burnt sienna for my foxes. These two shades do make a lot more sense if you're doing the more like natural actual fox. These plus like a little bit of orange. It also depends on what time of year the fox is in, because they're a bit change color, those foxes. Kits are a different color. They can have like a lot of gray in them, interestingly. And I've never really added that to any of my paintings of foxes, but if I ever went back to doing more realistic foxes, I think I would. Okay, this was burnt sienna. Look, I gotta write a B again. Interestingly, I can write them decently well in cursive, but I don't like writing in cursive, so I don't do it. Maybe I should switch to cursive because that's how I can write B's, but you know. If I write in cursive, it feels like I'm writing in some secret code that the youngins can't understand, and that doesn't feel right to me. I also think it's really weird that they haven't taught cursive. It's really important. It's one of those skills that you really should have. And before you go telling me that you never use cursive, you use it for your signature. And I actually learned this in school. Learning cursive, particularly in grade school when they teach it, or when they used to teach it, I don't know if they teach it again now or not, but when they used to teach it, teaching or like learning cursive actually creates some brain paths that you can't create any other way and that you can't create later on. Like it has to happen when you're a kid. Super interesting. Raw umber. I can write lowercase b's. Those are fine. It's those darn uppercase ones. I thought about like taking the time to make a nice little grid on this paper and make it look all nice and neat and deliberate. And then I thought to myself, I'm probably going to buy some more new paints this year. So I think it might make more sense to just do it the same way as I did the last one. I'll show you my last one at some point here. My last one, I started with black and white and I just like made a smear of it, and then I think it was the third color I decided it would look better if I did little like boxes, so it kind of looks a little silly. Yep, see? Terrible B, I'm telling you. At least it's just for me and I can read it, so that's fine. This color I actually have 2 bottles of because the company that I buy my paints from was giving away this color and I think ultramarine blue, like mini bottles of them, if you bought any Liquitex acrylic wash. And so I have 2 bottles, 2 little bitty bottles of Scarlet, and I think it's ultramarine. We'll get there in a minute. And I'd never use these colors, but they are nice to have. Useful colors, if not ones that I use very often. This one I basically never use, to the point that the top is a little dry. Get a little bit of water. When I bought this color, I was actually using like fluorescents not infrequently, and a couple of months after I got this color, I have not used fluorescents almost at all. And the funny thing is, I actually really like fluorescents. I think they add a super fun touch to a lot of my like fantasy style paintings, but fluorescents are transparent and that makes it really hard to add them to something that has a lot of color because they just don't show up. Abbreviations are my friend. I think I'll do 2 more colors on this row and then I'll start on the next row. Conversely, this color, when I got it, I almost never used it, and now I use it all the time. This one mixes really nicely with bright aqua green to make this really pretty, really versatile purpley gray color that I use all the time, super frequently. If you've watched me for a long time, you know that I love quinacridone magenta. I used to base every single one of my paintings with quinacridone, and then I got tired of having to buy quinacridone all the time. It's one of the most popular colors, so it is also one of the most expensive colors. I would think that you would make the less popular colors more expensive, and the more popular colors less expensive. But apparently I'm just wrong on this. I am not going to try to write quinacridone, so I'm just going to call it Quin Magenta. All right, this is looking really good. What's the next shade? Okay, so yeah, we'll go ahead and start on the next row now. This is another shade that when I bought it, I just didn't use it very often. And now I use it a ton to add just that little extra touch of depth and shadow to a lot of my paintings. I can guarantee you have seen me use this color before. If you guys actually want to know more about the colors I use and like when and where I use them, please let me know in the comments, because that would be something I can definitely add to my videos. At the very least, I can let you know in the description box like what colors I used and what brands I was using at the time, because I do have to keep track of that. I'm usually working on multiple paintings at the same time, so I have, if I'm taking a break from a painting, I will set it on I'll set it on my desk, and I will lay out all the colors that I used, and I'll take a picture of it. That way I can't forget what I was using. I also, if I am doing paintings that have completely different color schemes and that I know aren't really going to have any crossover on shades, what I'll do is I have these little gray tubs, and I will put all the colors for one painting in one of those, and all the colors for the other painting in another one of those. All that to say, I do keep track of what colors I use on all of my paintings. So if you guys ever want to know what colors I'm using, just let me know, because I can start including that in the description boxes if you are curious. So one of the really nice things with the swatch sheets is that I can kind of gauge what shade I want for whatever painting I'm working on at the time. Because sometimes you look at all the paints in your little bin of paint and you just kind of get a little overwhelmed. But if you have just a piece of paper that has all your colors on it, you can look at it and go, okay, so that's the one that I want, that one right there. The Liquitex ones are actually pretty good about the color on the bottle, like this little schmear, is pretty close, if not spot on, to the color you're going to get on your canvas. But Turner, the other brand that I use, is pretty terrible. So I like to have the swatch sheets so that I know for certain that the color I'm looking at is the color that I wanted. This is the other little guy, and I was right, it is ultramarine blue, which is just not a color I use very often, so for a lot of the paintings that I do, it's just a little too bright of a blue. I think if I was doing more underwater scenes, which, to be fair, one of my goals for this year is to paint a underwater fantasy scene, ultramarine's great for that, because it is a very marine shade of blue, obviously. But for a lot of the stuff that I've currently been painting, it just doesn't make sense to use it. Oh my gosh. Ultramarine blue. Did I nearly spell that wrong? Yes. Did I technically spell that wrong and fix it at the last second? Also yes. This one I actually use a lot. This is phthalo. And I'm sure you will recognize this shade much more than you will ultramarine if you watch a lot of my videos, because I just don't use ultramarine, like I said, but I use phthalo a lot. If I'm using a blue, I am more apt to reach for phthalo. It has a little bit of green in it, which, because I paint with a lot of greens and teals, just makes more sense to use phthalo because the light matches, basically. Speaking of, because I've heard very many people say it incorrectly, it is not phthalocyanide, it is not phthalocyanite, it is phthalocyanine. Clear? Clear. P-H-T-H-L, oops, A-L-O, blue, green, shade. Yes, I spelled it wrong, it's fine. Again, it's just for me, not really a big deal if it's not spelled right or if my B's look bad. Not like I'm giving these away. Just a reference card for me. Me, myself, and I. So I got this shade of blue a little bit more recently, and I also use this one a lot. I'll use this one a ton for night skies. I'll mix this one with dioxazine purple and then ivory black, and that's how I'll do that fun blending technique like I did on the badger painting, where I just kind of throw a bunch of very wet paint on the canvas and use a dry brush to blend it out. One of my favorite night sky techniques, and Prussian blue is great for that. All right, we are getting there. This one is new. It was on sale at the time that I got it, and I thought to myself, yeah, I'd probably use cerulean. I don't use it a ton, but I do use it, and I think it was worth the money. Cerulean's a nice sky blue color as long as you mix it with something. I think it's too blue to be believable depending on where you live. It's actually a fairly decent representation of blue living where I live. a blue sky living where I live, but the blue sky here is not believable to a lot of people, so I try to not replicate what I see here. One more blue, and then we are into the greens, or the greeny teals rather, and that'll be the last shade we do. I don't do these in a standard rainbow pattern. Because for some reason this order makes sense to my brain, and when I've tried to do a swatch sheet with like Regi Biv or whatever, I get confused and I can't find the colors I'm looking for. So this is the order my brain wants them in, so this is the order I do them in, because again, it's just for me. Nobody else ever sees this, except you guys here today. Alrighty. I think that leaves us with 5 more colors. This is the shade that I will mix with the medium magenta that I was talking about earlier in this video. This guy mixes absolutely beautifully with medium magenta. If I had a ton of time, I think I would make a sheet where I'm like mixing all of my colors together so that I can see what they all make, but I don't have that kind of time, and I've mixed most of them together in varying quantities at this point so that I basically just have an idea in my head of what ones I like and what ones I just prefer to have as they are. Alright, here we go with a B again. Hey, that one looks good. I'm actually really happy that this sheet is going to have like a ton of extra space on it, because that'll mean that if I get new colors, I can just draw a line and I can do the same kind of pattern on the other side of the paper. My previous paper was a little full and I had fit all of my paints on it, so I didn't separate it by Liquitex and Turner. I just tried to fit everything on one. And I think, honestly, it's just going to be a lot nicer to have it on 2 separate sheets than it was to have it on one big one. I didn't actually remember that I had these smaller sheets of paper until I went looking. At least I can spell turquoise. Alright, 3 more colors in the Liquitex collection, or rather in my Liquitex collection. They don't actually have a ton more colors than this. I think I'm only missing a few, but they're all ones that I wouldn't really use, so I didn't bother getting them. This one, it's kind of a just straight up lime green. Yeah, vivid lime is what it's called. And I never used it until I realized that it works really well as a magical element, because lime green is such an unnatural color. So if I add it on something, it almost gives it this magic glow. And I just think that that is a really, really pretty and really easy way of adding a little bit of magic to a painting without doing a ton of effort, which I am all for. This one I got because I was trying to do more daylight scenes. I do a lot of night or sunset, and I wanted to do some actually daytime scenes, and this is a more realistic daytime green. It just is. It's a more true green, where I lean more toward using like turquoise deep or cypress from the Turner collection that you'll see in a little bit here. This is emerald green. And last but not least, this one I don't use very often. I tend more to use it as an accent, but it's a nice warm green that really comes in handy sometimes. There are times that you just very much need a nice warm green. This is also showing you that I am not one of those artists who will color mix everything. I like to start with some pre-mixed colors and then mix them into the exact hue or shade that I want, rather than having to mix a color and then have the problem of needing to mix to the exact same shade all the time. I like to have a little bit of extra wiggle room in there. All right, and that is the last of the Liquitex. So give me just a minute and I'm gonna arrange all of my Turner colors and we will get started on that one. All right, so now we're gonna do the Turner Acrylic Gouache. These are the ones that come in the tubes, so they're a little harder for me to arrange, so you can see them this time, which isn't a problem, just a thing to note. I started getting the Turner colors purely because Liquitex didn't have as many of the shades as I wanted. Specifically things like Naples Yellow and Peacock Blue were colors that I really wanted to just have and not have to mix to all the time. And Liquitex just wasn't going to make colors like that. So that meant that I needed to find another brand, and Turner is highly recommended for acrylic gouache. I didn't want to get actual gouache. Turner is actually very well known for their gouache as well, but I didn't want to get, hang on, let me write this color. I didn't want to get actual gouache and then have the issue of not being able to layer my colors, because you really can't layer with traditional gouache because it's watercolor. It doesn't want to layer. This color, Naples Yellow, is a shade that I use a lot. I didn't really realize how much I was using it until I switched to acrylic gouache. I was using Artesa's gouache. If you want to get started with gouache, I do highly recommend Artesa. They're super budget friendly. The only issue with Artesa is they're not open stock. So if you get Artesa and you find that you really like one color, you can't just get that color. You have to buy the whole set. So they're a really good place to start. But then I would recommend switching to something like Turner, who is relatively budget friendly, but open stock. What was I saying? Oh, back when I was using my Artesa colors, I was using that previous shade that I forgot to write a name on. It's called Naples Yellow. I was using that one an absolute ton, and I don't know what happened. I did close it properly. I looked at it multiple times, but it just dried out and I couldn't open the tube anymore. So I needed to find a new one, and at that point I had realized that acrylic gouache was a thing, and for me, acrylic gouache is really the best of both worlds because it allows me to still to still paint with the medium that I really like, which is gouache, but I still get the freedom that I really appreciate with acrylic. Because watercolor just has some really harsh constraints, and so does oil, honestly. Oil's constraints make it to where I just don't want to paint with oil. Because I like to be able to keep working on a piece and not have to put it down for a week at a time while I let the layer dry. So there are logistical issues between me and oil paint that mean that I do not paint with oils. Ooh, crispy. Pardon me while I just flake all of this dried paint off this tube for no apparent reason. That didn't need to happen right now. This one, again, you will probably recognize this shade because I use it on a lot of my fantasy style tree trunks. The shade is called Chocolate. It very much looks like chocolate. And I liked the idea of trees in a fantasy world that don't really have the traditional just flat brown. And I know that trees are various colors in the real world too, but I don't know of a tree that is chocolate colored. If you know of one, let me know. This one I really thought that I would use a lot more than I have. It's a little bit chalky, which kind of bothers me. Like if you don't add water to it, it does not smooth out. And it's a really pretty color. And the funny thing is I have another color that does the same thing, and I just make it work. I keep forgetting to write the colors down. I think it's because I have to hold the tube. Okay, so this one is Chocolate. And this one is J. Pale pink. J stands for Japanesque, in case you wondered. I'm actually going to take these and put them off to the side. Okay. This color on my previous sheet I spelled wrong, so I would like to remedy that on this sheet. This is again not one that I use a ton, but this is the highlight color for the red fox that I paint. So it is an important color, just not a color that I would use a lot of because it's just the highlight color. And this is Coral Red. Definitely wrote it as Corral Red on my last sheet, and I felt not very smart. Oops. This one, similar to Scarlet on the Liquitex sheet, I thought this would be a color that I would use a lot, and it just isn't. I think if I start doing more poppies, which hilariously that's the name of the red, but if I started doing more poppy style flowers in my paintings, I would use this a lot because again, it's the perfect poppy color. Which is just funny because it's poppy red. All right, 2 more reds and then we'll move into purples. this one I do use. This is the primary red that I use for the red fox. This is her shade. And I used to kind of mix to this color in Liquitex, and I was getting really annoyed by not always having consistency because I wanted her to match across all of the paintings, and I think there's two where her colors are just slightly off, and I really didn't like it. So I bought that shade, and that fixed the problem. This one I also don't use a whole lot, but I do use it sometimes. I will sometimes use this as an accent color on the fox. So very much a good one to have on hand, but not one that I'm going to go through quickly. Which it is really nice actually to have colors like that, because this one's also similar enough to carmine that if I did run out of carmine, I could theoretically switch to this. And I don't think that most people would notice. This color is the low light for the red fox. It's just a little bit purpley. The shade is called Aubergine, and I would think that Aubergine would be a completely different shade of purple from that. I would think that Aubergine would be closer to the dioxazine from the Liquitex line. I actually have dioxazine in Turner gouache as well because I was going through it so fast in the Liquitex, and I could get it for a lot cheaper in Turner. And then promptly, as soon as I bought this giant thing of dioxazine, I stopped using it. So now I try to actually run out of a color before I buy more, unless it's one that I know I'm going to use a ton because it's a primary color across a series or something. So like the turquoise deep color from Liquitex, that one I have a spare of, and also this little green guy right here. I have 2 spares of that color because I use that color a lot. Okay, that is and I think this one is a prime example of how bad the colors are in representation for Turner, because this is a lot more pinky, and that's just straight up deep purple. So this one you really have to go by the name and not by like the color on the tube, because I would never have guessed that that's the color I was buying. I do like that color, I use it a lot, but not what I thought I was getting when I ordered it. This one I use a lot in those fun night skies that I do. It's a very pretty night sky color. This is blue violet. I will also use it to kind of up the depth on some of my greens. I'll add just a touch of blue violet, and I think that adds a really cool color layer to them. And as always, terrible letter B. Get these out of the way now. And let's keep going. This one I don't use a ton. I got this color and the next color at the same time because I couldn't quite tell what I was getting when I got them, which is one issue with ordering paints online, but here we are. So I got this one and the next one, thinking one of them would be the color I was after, and I was right. The next one was the color I was after. So this one is just night blue, and honestly it is pretty accurate. Like, I would call that a stereotypical night blue. But the color that I was looking for when I got that one was closer to this guy, who, again, very similar. I don't know if you can actually tell the difference with this camera, but this one's just a little bit deeper and I think a little bit like greener. This one's more blue, this one's more green, which again, I lean more toward the greens and teals in my paintings in general. So this was the color that I was looking for. This is J. Black, blue. That's a good B. Did I have to pause and think about it for a minute? Yes, I did. Did you all witness it? Yes, you did. This is another one of those that I got thinking that I would use it, and I just don't use it that often. Again, I use it sometimes, so it's worth having, but I don't use it a lot, so I don't always keep it in with the bulk of my paints. I do have a bin of, I don't use these very often, colors. Oh, I need to write the name down on that. Let me do this one, and I'll put the names on both. I have a lot of different blues and greens and greeny blues from Turner. Again, because I don't like to have to mix to these colors all the time. Would much rather have them pre-mixed. All right, so this bottom one is sky blue. This one is cobalt blue. And then I think we're gonna have to go up a line. And the blues are also, I have really pretty blues, but the colors on the bottles are not representative of the colors of the paints. This is turquoise blue, and the actual paint color is very close to just straight turquoise, but the color on the tube is just like a vivid cerulean almost. To the point that I put them in the wrong order because I actually wanted this next one before this one. Oh well. Alright. I guess I could put it down here. There is a little bit of room. Then they'd be closer to the order I wanted. Alright, we'll do that. It'll just be between you and me. This is basically the same color as the bright blue that I have in Liquitex, And basically I bought this one and a bright aqua green from Turner just to see if they were similar enough that I could switch to Turner as soon as I ran out of Liquitex, because those are both colors that I use a lot, and the Turner is a little bit less expensive, and I think they have very similar quality. That's the word I'm looking for. They have very similar quality. So I wasn't feeling like I needed to stick with the Liquitex for those. Did. All right, this one is another one of those that I have a spare bottle of because I use it a lot. You will have seen me use this one quite a bit, even if you didn't know what color I was using, because I don't always tell you. This is one of those that I just keep going back to over and over and over again. It's really, really pretty. That's Peacock Blue. And then we'll get closer toward the colors that you guys can already see on the screen here. This is another color that you've seen me use a lot. I will mix this with quinacridone magenta, similar to how I'll mix the medium magenta with the bright aqua green. Quinacridone plus, this is Viridian, makes one of my favorite purples. And it's hard to mix too otherwise, so I just do that. I don't mean to be like flipping you off either, I'm just holding this. Pretend I'm not flipping you off, okay? I'm gonna go in this order. Ooh. This bottle's a mess. Gently squeeze out some paint. You can see how I'm having a hard time figuring out what order to put these paints in because I can't tell what the color is by the tube. This is Phthalo. Phthalo will also mix nicely with quinacridone. Let's see if I can spell phthalo right this time. P-H-T-H-A-L-O. Green. Success. I did it, y'all. I did it. This one, when I got it, I didn't think I was going to use it that much, and then I find myself using it a lot for, again, the daytime scenes. Phthalo and Viridian can almost go back and forth. This one is strictly daylight. Does not work very well with the moonlight coloration. My paintbrush is getting a workout. Paint crusties all over the place. One of the things I really like about the Liquitex bottles is that I don't end up with this like crusty powder of paint from it just getting dried in the lids. But I guess the tubes are a little more traditional. It's whatever. Also love this color. This was one of the first, this one and chocolate, I think, were the first two colors that I got from Turner. And I use Cypress a lot. I'm pretty sure I have a spare of Cypress in my cupboard. these guys can go down in my little container. And we're almost done. This one. This is my only actual gouache from Turner. So I am very particular in when I will use this one because this is not acrylic. This is straight up gouache. So this one will come off. It will not be permanent setting, but it is really pretty. And for some reason, they don't have this shade in the acrylic. And that's how I know that. I do still want to have it swatched, but it doesn't really make sense to have just that one have its own special line. All right. Almost done, you guys. Almost done. This one, bright aqua green, like I told you, well, I'll write the name in a second because I forgot again. But like I told you, that's the other one that I got to see if I could switch to Turner when my Liquitex ones run out. And now I just kind of go back and forth on whether I'm using Turner or Liquitex just to kind of give myself a better idea of which one I like better. And honestly, I'm undecided, so I will probably just go with whichever one is cheaper when next I order paints. If they are similar quality, getting the same use out of both of them, then I don't think there's a point in me spending more for one when both work just fine. Especially when I'm looking at starting to sell my paintings. I'm also now trying to think of kind of being a little bit more budget conscious for people in general, and stuff like, can I get the same quality for a lower cost product and reduce the end cost for y'all, because I don't want y'all to be spending more than you should just because I'm buying a name brand instead of an off-brand that's made of the same thing and does the same thing. You know what I mean. They're both name brands, but you know what I mean. This is the other color that I have 2 spare bottles of. This is one of my primary magic colors. I use that in almost all of my paintings. I use it a ton. Okay, so now that that is done, I have one more thing. That I would like to swatch with y'all. And that means I'm going to have to get up and get it because I, for some reason, set it too far away from me. All right, so this is my newest thing, and my paintbrush can have a rest at long last. This is my newest thing, and I just want to get these down on paper so that I can see what they look like. And I'm not going to be able to do it as smoothly as with paints, but I think I can still kind of get an idea. of what I'm looking at. These are oil pastels, which I'm pretty sure I had mentioned to you guys that I was starting to play with these as a thing that I can add on top of paintings. I have not had them for very long. In fact, I got them for Christmas. And that means I haven't actually played with them a whole lot. And I'm just going to swatch these in the order that they exist in the box rather than do my own thing. But these are really fun. It's almost like having a crayon. I just did that one and then this one. But they layer really nicely over gouache. Almost wrote Russell. Oops. Anyway, they layer really nicely over the gouache, and with what little I have played with them, they're really fun. So it's like being able to take a little oil paint crayon and add it on top of whatever you're painting, just to give it a little bit more texture and a little bit more movement, which I think is super fun. These were a gift from my parents. They were a thing that I had asked for. My mom likes to get us really like meaningful gifts, so I tried to save a art supply that I could buy myself and instead just put it on my Christmas list and ask for it from her. So I just told her the brand that I was looking at, and then she went and got it. Orangish yellow. That is literally what this one is called. I love it. So these are not open stock, so I won't be able to get singles of these, but this brand, this is Caran d'Ache, these were recommended online as a good place to start with oil pastels in general, because they're relatively easy to work with, and oh, weird. This one has an old logo on it. Super weird. Anyway, so these were recommended online as a good place to start with oil pastels because they're nice and blendable, and they have really pretty colors. And they're not like break the bank expensive, which I appreciate, again, as we were discussing. I think one of my next videos will be just me showing you how I play with these on top of a gouache piece. Ooh, that's like my bright aqua green. Ooh, turquoise green, okay. That one's pretty. I will use that one a lot. Turquoise blue. This may have been the primary reason why I wanted to do this swatching today, because I want to be able to use these more. And I know that this is not going to be super representative of these because my intention is to put them on top of other colors. But I think it's a good starting place, if nothing else. That one's pretty. This goes much faster than the paints because I'm just picking up a crayon, basically. So from what I understand with oil pastels is that these don't actually dry. So they just kind of stay as a malachite green. That's a great color name. Anyway, they stay as an almost constantly malleable thing. So if you don't put fixative or varnish or something over the top, these will just stay as what they call fugitive colors. Which I also think is really cool because sometimes you want to be able to go back and change things. And sometimes you like finish a painting and you look at it a few days later and you're like, oh, I could just make this little tweak over here or this little tweak over here. And working with gouache, there's only so many tweaks you can do, especially, well, with acrylic gouache, there's only so many tweaks you can do because it permanently sets. Lilac. Just like 9 more colors left to go here. This one I've used already. Purple. I don't think that's purple, you guys. Carmine. This is just a really nice, like, basic starter set of colors that I think is going to be super useful and super usable. And I only really see there being a couple of colors that I won't use a whole lot, which is really nice because I don't like to waste stuff. Really don't like wasting art supplies. So I try to only get stuff that I will actually use, even if I'm just asking for it as a gift. I don't want to get things that I know I'm not going to use or that are like a big question mark on whether or not I will use them. But I have been eyeing this set of acrylic gouache for a little while. So this is a very happy day for Rani to finally have them all swatched and ready to go. What color are you? Just yellow. I also have these from Sennelier. that, I'll go ahead and swatch off to the side here. These are a little bit smoother. And a little bit like creamier. And this was just their discovery set that I got a while back that I think was literally like $10. So it doesn't even have like legitimate color names on it. We'll just put a line here, and this will be that's my cylinder. But that is my oil pastels, and I think those are some really pretty colors. So I've gone from, let's see, I've gone from this sheet that you can see I started out by like just kind of whatevering and then switched to the little rectangles of color. Gone from that to the 3 that we did today. And I think these are going to be super useful for me. These are super fun colors. I am going to have a lot of fun with the oil pastels. Expect to see oil pastel videos from me in your future. But anyway, thank you guys for watching. I hope that you enjoyed this little exploration into color. I can't get over this malachite green. That's really pretty. But I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and I will see you in a couple weeks with a whole new one. Bye.